Let's open up the OG mailbag. Alongside Joe Giglio, I'm Joe Ovias. We are inside Eford Studios. We're always brought to you by Copiers Plus, but when we open up the OG mailbag, it's brought to you by you, the OG fan subscriber, over at ogtrianglemedia.com, and of course our friends at the Butcher's Market, where Joe Giglio is going to turn into a salmon.
I really feel like I've discovered something. Salmon's good for you. There's like benefits.
Yeah, I believe that's the omega-3 fatty acids or whatever.
Whatever it is, it's not a hot dog. It won't take years off your life. In fact, I think you're supposed to eat salmon and like bananas and avocados to counteract the cigarettes and the hot dogs that take time off of your life.
It's funny you mentioned that because lately I've been getting fed all of these. Here's what 30 looked like in 1985.
Yeah.
And here's what 30 looks like in 2025. My personal favorite was they brought up Rue McClanahan from the Golden Girls. This is Rue at 50 on Golden Girls. And here is Sofia Vergara at 50. It's like, what has changed? I'm like, something tells me that since we've cut back on copious amounts of hot dogs and cigarettes, people look a little bit better.
Twinkie, the original Twinkie recipe.
Right.
Although bring those back, man.
I've also heard
survive the nuclear fallout.
I've also heard if you find OG Light somewhere out there, it gives you life.
I think it has medicinal benefits.
I would agree.
I was at Shady's last night. I had to go to Shady's last night to get some.
Little bit of housekeeping before we get going here on the mailbag. We will be at Simply Crepes off Oberlin Road in Raleigh next Thursday for OG Live. We'll be out there at 2:00. We'll be eating Nutella banana stuffed crepes. I'm excited about this.
I was going to say, you know how I feel about breakfast. Then you throw in some coffee and some dessert type crepes.
They also have alcohol there.
No, I don't. No,
dude. Imagine yourself, because my dad was always big on the Tia Maria, that like liqueur you would put in a coffee.
Okay.
This was big. My dad, big Ernie energy.
Okay.
There. So I think it was called Tia Maria.
Sounds right.
And he would put a little something in his coffee, a little after dinner, right? So you can get yourself a boozy coffee. I'm pretty sure you could do that at Simply Crepes.
I'm excited.
I'm excited about this too.
All the options.
I'm also excited about the mailbag. Let's get after it. You know how it works. The first part's free. The rest of it is behind the OG Fans paywall. So go to ogtrianglemedia.com to go be part of OG Fans. You get this. You get OG on Business. You get wonderful newsletter items from our friends Tom and Hannah on the Carolina Hurricanes. The KK one that Tom wrote about this week really hits home for some people after what happened in the playoffs. So go to ogtrianglemedia.com.
Here's the mail that never fails. Makes me want to whack my tail when it comes to what a whale.
Okay, let's just go ahead and address this out of the gate. Yes. Thank you to everybody who passed along, pardon my take, aggregating a listener's kid. Isn't that how it worked out?
Yes.
That's what I thought, right? So I had a lot of people get up in my mentions that, pardon my take, got around to the Carolina Panthers Super Bowl bound stat. And here is PFT commenter butchering our names, but also giving us a wonderful bio update for all of our platforms.
Hey, wait, you had a stat you wanted to give me.
Okay, so it's like something that we have to maybe put a future on. And the guy that he DM'd me the first stat, and he said, remember when that guy gave Big Cat the Tarek Skubal envelope? This is my version of that. But then I went and I added to the stat a little bit. So I think this comes from the Ovies and Giglo podcast. I'm probably butchering that name. They seem like nice guys. Seem like they've got a good podcast. They were
seem like nice guys. Seem like they have a good podcast. Hey, man, appreciate you. We might just put that on a shirt. Just a blank shirt with the quote. Seem like nice guys. Seem like they have a good podcast. PFT commenter.
We'll take it.
We'll take that. We'll absolutely take. We'll take any promotion we can get. So anyway, they go through the process of the thing that is related to the Carolina Panthers. The last two times they went to the Super Bowl, the symmetry that's at play. Ohio State winning a national championship in the same year that the Panthers had a losing record. And then the following year, they opened with the Jacksonville Jaguars. It happened ahead of the Houston Super Bowl. It happened ahead of the Bay Area, quote unquote, Super Bowl. And it looks like it's going to happen this year. And where does this Super Bowl happen to be, Joe?
I don't know.
I think it's in the Bay Area again.
Is it? We're back?
I'm pretty sure we're back in the Bay Area this year.
Oh, because it's the 10th year. It's the 60th already?
Yeah, man. We're there, dude.
Wow.
Oh, we're going to be getting a lot of Super Bowl 50 retrospectives for the
Wow.
Carolina Panthers as we hit that 10-year mark. So anyway, that's where that stat came from. So what was it? Buzzy's kid who had sent that to you?
Yes.
Which we mentioned on the podcast,
Yes.
the first go round. So aggregation of aggregation of aggregation.
And they added the J-Lo factor in there?
Yeah, there's a J-Lo factor in there as
Nice.
well. That's the case too.
You've got mail.
All right, this comes to us from who's this come from? This comes to us from Ryan. Did Greg Sankey back down from college football playoff automatic qualifiers, or was that model a negotiation tactic for something else? This requires a little bit of context of how the week has gone on. If you're coming out of your Carolina Hurricanes bubble, this week you had SEC meetings. The week started with SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey feeling it, a little high on his own supply, calling out coordinated press releases by the ACC and the Big 12, talking about how Alabama and Ole Miss belonged in the college football playoff.
Like irrationally
Like,
angry.
straight up mad about that
Like
stuff.
what? Oh, now that I say it though,
Yeah.
they haven't won the title in 2 years.
And
they
they all-
did win a basketball title
Yeah.
this year,
Yeah. He doesn't care about that.
but
He doesn't care about
he
that.
did give it away by saying, if it was 4 teams this year, we would have had half.
Exactly. This is how Greg Sankey operates. So a lot of the push was for automatic qualifiers for the Big Ten and the SEC, and the ACC and the SEC included. It would be the 4-4-2-2-1. But a funny
That one, 4-4-4-2-2-1-1.
But a funny thing happened. A funny thing happened this week, and
Funny thing happened on the way to the OG Sports Phone.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised it happened this way. Just about everybody dunked on Greg Sankey for this. They dunked on him bringing up Alabama and going to the mat for a mid-Alabama team. They've dunked on Greg Sankey over this idea that automatic qualifier, like this idea like, well, if you're so good, if you're so dominant, you've got this grueling schedule, well, why would you want to limit yourself to 4 automatic qualifiers? The way you guys are talking, the 5+11, which is what Jim Phillips and Brett Yormark and others have been pushing, including SEC coaches. They're like, yo, why don't we just keep this like the NCAA tournament where the top ranked conference
You
winners,
just saw it in basketball and you just saw it in baseball.
and then you fill out the rest with at-large berths, just like you do in basketball. Why don't you do that? We would probably benefit. Because again, I bring this up. Look at the SEC in basketball. They put 14 teams in the NCAA tournament. Look at the College World Series. Half the field is the SEC, right? I'm being facetious, but it's the SEC Invitational. So why wouldn't you want to fill out the college football playoff bracket with a bunch of SEC teams? You get 5, you get 6. Like, what are we doing here, right? So I tried to process this. I tried to process this, but I think there's some other things going on. We can get to the thought process behind this, or maybe to the listener's question, is this a negotiation tactic for something else? But the thing that I really, really was fascinated by was that usual suspects with the national college football media have been pushing back on Greg Sankey. And I think this has thrown Greg Sankey off.
Because he's not used to any of that.
Yeah, not his football coaches pushing back, not ADs pushing back, not other commissioners pushing back. I think he was a little surprised that those he gives access to on a pretty regular basis, and I'm not using it as a knock. That is a very smart play by Greg Sankey to give access to the media the way that he does.
Yeah, regularly.
Quick story time. Greg Sankey will show up to SEC kickoff, their event that takes place over 4 days. The man has his own headset that he brings to the various radio stations and podcasts that show up. Our commissioner would never do that. It even makes time for us, but you're never going to see Jim Phillips on the radio floor the way you would with Greg Sankey. So that's a very smart play, because when you build that relationship, you are more likely to back the SEC. And this happens with the national college football guys. And every single one of them dunked on Greg Sankey for this. So I think that threw him off a little bit. That might have gotten him to back off a little bit.
Well, it's also incongruent with his own previous public comments about the playoff.
Yeah.
Like, you're just being disingenuous when you say, "Oh, we could have stayed at 4."
Mm-hmm.
Like you were being so magnanimous by going to 12. No, you knew you were the one who created the 12-team format.
Right. So let's get to the other part of the listener's question. Was this some sort of negotiation tactic for something else? that Greg Sankey never wanted the automatic qualifiers, but he's using it as a leverage point to get something else in return. So let's go back to February, where ESPN's Pete Thamel reported that the basketball tournament, the NCAA basketball tournament, wants to expand. This is something that Greg Sankey has wanted for a hot minute now. Quote, the number that leaders are targeting appears to be 76, adding 8 teams to the mix, a move that could be made as soon as 2026 for the NCAA tournament.
Bring it on. You know how I feel about this.
There's also uniformity in conference games. There's an element where Greg Sankey understands 9 conference games is a television leverage point for him, but not everybody's playing 9 conference games. I'm looking directly at you, Jim Phillips, and the ACC. Oh, so you want to do all these things? Let's bring some uniformity here. Big Ten's going to play 9 conference games.
They already do.
We're going to play 9 conference games. What about you? You need to play 9 conference games. So there could be a long view here on getting uniformity from Greg Sankey and using this playoff automatic qualifier business as a leverage point. So
I don't think it was a long game. I think he was having a visceral reaction to saying your statement, Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips, makes it seem like I only care about the SEC.
okay,
That's not true. I'm saying to you, look, I came up with a 12-team playoff.
Yeah.
I've already done things that have been for the good of the game.
yeah,
Don't act like I'm only out here doing things for me in the Big Ten. I think that's what his reaction was about.
mm-hmm.
I think the long game he was playing was with the guaranteed spots. He can then go back to his coaches and say, all right, we have guaranteed spots. That means we're going to increase our league inventory to the 9-game schedule
Mm-hmm.
because we can afford to play another conference game because we'll get more money from our television partner. We'll have a guaranteed spot. We'll turn the SEC championship game into an SEC jamboree. We'll play 2 games in Atlanta. We'll have, top 2 teams will be automatically in, and then we'll play for those 2 guaranteed spots. And then you know what? There's nothing preventing us from getting any more of those at-large spots either. So I think that was a financial play where he was looking a step ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the reaction itself on the podium was just that.
I can see that.
It was like, why do you, and this goes back to I looked him in the sockets and we had a deal. We were men talking to other men.
If your word isn't worth anything, what are we doing as a society?
Word is bond.
Yeah.
Like this goes back to that alliance. Yes,
Mhm.
that was conveniently broken by Kevin Warren, but it goes back to that too. I feel like this was just Greg Sankey saying, I'm sick of you people thinking that you're gonna get together and get me.
Yeah.
I'm out here on that wall. You need me on that wall.
Well, I think to wrap the point on this, because I want to, because I've been thinking about this. What is in it for the SEC for the 4-4-2-2-1? Call the OG Sports Phone. What's in it for the SEC? And I get back to what I referenced earlier this week. It's about shaping the sport in your image, straight up. There are times where Greg Sankey talks, and I don't know if he's necessarily a sports fan or he understands why people like sports. This is in relation to how he talks about the NCAA tournament in basketball. If you go back and you read his quotes, you listen to him talk about expanding the NCAA tournament, how he views mid-majors and automatic qualifiers. It sounds like a man who doesn't understand why we like this stuff, okay? And he lives in his SEC bubble that, man, they could put, shit on a shingle and people will eat it, right? So that, I think, is what he's so used to. To me, Greg Sankey is completely motivated by making sure that college football is made in its image, and he's the one that's doing it. So what do you get out of a 4-4-2-2-1? Well, it allows you, and this is going to tie something back to something you've talked about, and I think you're onto something and we're going to see it. If you were to go to automatic qualifiers, you create a television package that rivals the NFL. You will have your SEC champion coming out of 2 divisions in the same way you would have the NFC and the AFC. You could actually go to 20 teams total and have your 2 divisions. Now I see you're making the face because this gets to a thing that you've been talking about, and we can see this. So you go to 10 teams apiece, you spit out your 2 division champions, you play in the SEC championship game for the true Super Bowl of the SEC, and then you have your other 2 feeders to get you into the college football playoff. That becomes the SEC football jamboree. Can you imagine a weekend in Atlanta where they play Thursday, Friday, Saturday to do all these things? Now, you could also set up TV inventory with the Big Ten. if you want to, for that crossover with the Big Ten, because they'll be in a similar situation with a 4-4-2-2-1-1 or go OG Sports Phone. Now, how do you get to 20? You need 4 more teams. Now, do you think that the SEC ADs and presidents are going to want to go out there and add 4 teams that can truly compete with Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, and the other powers, if you will? Do you think they want to add those tems?
They do not.
Spoiler. What would they rather add?
I would rather add NC State,
Carolina. That's a brand that will be mid in football. That is that is guaranteed. You know what we need? We need some triangle good.
Yes.
We need some triangle good up in the SEC.
And then in basketball, you have a little bit of a bonus.
You do.
Right?
Right. Hell, bring Duke to play Vanderbilt.
You bring Duke in and Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
Because Virginia Tech, while they think there's something, or not.
That would be the NC State equivalent. You bring Duke and Carolina over, right? And then you bring Virginia Tech and NC State over so they could be paired up and all that kind of stuff. It's funny because I was listening to the Cover 3 podcast this week.
Our friend, Chip Patterson.
And Chip Patterson and the crew, they stumbled into that in the middle of the conversation. And it's like, guys, welcome to the club, because that's where things are headed.
That's what broke Greg Sankey this year. Indiana is the team that broke Greg Sankey this year.
Easily.
And the conference schedule that they played, because he can't sit there and bag on the Big Ten.
No.
Right? So it has to be, because it becomes, well, how did Indiana get in? They beat a bunch of bad teams in the Big Ten.
Uh-huh.
And the Big Ten forever, I've never disputed this. The Big Ten forever, the top 2 or 3 teams in the Big Ten, just as good as the teams in the SEC. But teams 4 through 12 or 4 through 16 in the Big Ten, the ACC is better than those teams.
Uh-huh.
They are.
Uh-huh.
They just are.
Yeah.
And you got to have a little bit of filler. The SEC has no filler, especially if Vanderbilt's going to be out here getting Pavia and getting functional transfers and doing well in the portal, and also have a really smart coach. So, hey, man, you can have a little wing of the irate Gilio conference right there in the SEC, and I would be there for every NC State Tennessee game. Sign me up right now.
Oh my goodness.
Just don't play them in Charlotte.
That would be great. All right, to the next question. This comes to us from Crow. Does Greg Sankey actually hate Jim Phillips and the ACC? He never makes these jaded comments about any of the other conferences, namely the Big 12. I don't know what it is, but he wants to kill the ACC and does not hide it at all.
I think Jim and Greg are diametrically opposed in how they view college sports in 2025.
That's what it is. Greg has zero time for as I've referenced before, Jim Phillips is very much like an old Jedi Order guy. His old hokey religion isn't going to get him through the next phase of college athletics, but he's a true believer, man.
He is a true believer. And we have been critical of Jim for that.
Yes.
But not critical of that he is genuine in his belief of what he thinks the college model should be.
Yeah, it's not
that
fake.
is genuine. That is
it's
not fake. And I think what he's trying to do, and we're seeing this, Brian Murphy had this about some of the scholarship numbers over at Carolina. And if Carolina, this is all sports now, if Carolina is going to have problems funding scholarships in all sports, what do you think that means for everyone else?
Yeah.
Because remember, during the pandemic, Roy Williams had to step in and give money so that spring players who were given that extra year of COVID eligibility.
That was Wanda.
Roy and Wanda
Yeah.
stepped in. You're right. Wanda is the money person.
She has the checkbook.
You're right. So Roy and Wanda stepped in and made sure that those athletes could compete that year in the spring on a full scholarship.
Yeah.
My point is, if the richest school in the ACC is having problems with money and filling out all of their rosters, that does not bode well for the future of some of these other sports. And we can talk about how I would solve that problem for those sports. I've been saying it forever. You regionalize those sports. You take them out of these conferences. You take out of that travel. There's plenty of teams here for them to compete against.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a big national tournament. That's what the NCAA is for.
From Dan, I don't really have a lot of time for people who complain about the SEC doing well in selection for baseball. Yeah, man, college baseball is a Southern thing, and SEC teams actually spend their athletic department money on baseball in a way some ACC teams don't. But even if you're cash-strapped teams like ECU, you can still shake a tree in the South and find 5 baseball players who will fall out. To be clear,
ECU's not cash strapped in baseball, but
they care about baseball, so that's where they put a lot of their effort in. To be clear,
NC State's cash strapped.
what we were referencing is the fact that as college baseball has evolved, we've called it the SEC ACC Invitational. And to your point, it's a lot easier to get through to the College World Series if your path does not have SEC teams to get in the way.
Hello, Carolina.
This is not a knock on the SEC.
I already took you.
We recognize what it's all about. This is not a knock on the SEC. Nobody's mad at the SEC.
It's reality.
It's the reality. And the ACC also has schools that care and have the budget to do it. Now, there's a difference. We're talking about cash strapped. There's levels to this. You were talking about Carolina earlier. Carolina's not cash strapped when it comes to baseball.
No.
NC State, on the other hand, ooh, buddy.
All you got to do is look at the numbers, the federal reported numbers on what their budgets are. States is well behind Wake Forest and Carolinas and ECU's. Here's the real alarm bell, Joe. It's probably a little bit below your radar. Brian O'Connor was the Virginia baseball coach.
Okay.
He broke the ACC's long drought of College World Series championships. It was either 15 or 16 that Virginia won the national championship.
Mm-hmm.
Virginia missed the tournament this year, and they were preseason favorites in the ACC, but they missed the tournament this year. Mississippi State, who you will recall, won the championship in 2021. That should have been NC State's championship. They've already fired their coach once, and then they fired their coach this year again before the tournament. And the number one rumored replacement for Mississippi State is Brian O'Connor. The last thing the ACC can afford is to lose more good coaches to the SEC in another sport. And that the SEC, to this person's point, yes, it's a Southern sport. You get to play the whole year round. It's a huge advantage. Go to any of the stadiums, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Alabama, Tennessee. They dwarf anything you see, other than Carolina, Clemson, Florida State in the ACC. It's staggering. Their level of their commitment. Then you add in the NIL element, right? I mean, that's a little bit of a game changer as well. This year is going to be interesting to see how the SEC stacks up. Can they do it again? Can the ACC keep up again?
I think they can keep up because baseball is, baseball is the greatest. We talk about random chaos generators in the NHL.
Yeah.
We talk about random chaos in basketball where a guy can just get hot from three. The great equalizer in baseball is the next day's pitcher, man, or bat suddenly going cold. I mean, this happened to NC State in the ACC tournament. This happened. NC State could have wrapped a regular season, if you will, against Stanford, and their bats just went the hell away. Carolina,
for a stretch of about 15 years under Mike Fox, was the best program in the country. Went to the College World Series. I think it was 6 years in a row.
Something like that, yeah.
They basically were one error away by a first baseman playing out of position from a national championship.
Right.
They were the best program indisputably over any metric other than winning the championship.
Yeah.
Florida State and Clemson have been to the College World Series, between the two of them dozens of times. No national titles. Mike Martin, Florida State's old coach, won more games in the history of the sport than anyone else. Went to the College World Series a dozen times. Still couldn't win the thing.
College pitching.
Miami, much like Miami football.
Oh, they dominated.
Miami baseball racked up national titles. They joined the fucking ACC, and all of a sudden it's like, okay.
Well,
remember that time we won all those national titles? It was really cool, right?
Other than basketball, Miami athletics has not exactly panned out the way that the ACC wanted it to when they added them. All right, that's going to wrap it up for the free portion of the mailbag. If you want to get the rest, where we get into Florida tax laws and how it relates to the NHL and some other matters, that's going to be on the paid side of things. Go to ogtrianglemedia.com. You can be part of OG fans and get the full mailbag. Excuse me. You can get the full mailbag episode. Sorry, still a little bit tired. You can get the full mailbag episode and more, like the newsletter and other podcasts. So head on over to ogtrianglemedia.com today.